All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Upper Hand Fantasy Podcast. We are going to go over the Week 1 waivers. We are here, dude, officially. Week 1. I mean, yesterday was kind of official. I think today is a little bit more official, right? Week 1's here. If we're going to talk about waivers, right, that means fantasy football season's here. What's up, Zach?
It's here. What's going on? Yesterday, Labor Day. Yeah, you said it didn't really feel like the start of fantasy football season, but this is it. Tuesday. We're now into the week, and kids are dropped off at school. I know you just posted, so we're buckling
Yeah.
down.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, my older one, she's in first grade. She just started first grade today, and the drop off process was a little chaotic because we didn't know exactly what to do and all that. But like, she was super nervous this morning. Like, she had like serious butterflies in her stomach, which is like completely normal. We all felt that, so she felt it
Right.
this morning, and now it's like, oh man, now it's like, we dropped her off and like, all right, I got a live stream to get to now. You know what I'm saying? Like I couldn't like soak in. I mean, I soaked in the moment, and then I was like, all right, time to go.
Right.
What do we do now? It's time to go to work. All right, so, but yeah, no, it's good though. I'm happy for her, and you know, it's that time of her life to start like legit school, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But yeah, um, but yeah, man. So waiver wire. So now, obviously, like, everybody drafted their team, right?
Mhm.
And you're probably pretty happy with the team that you drafted for the most part, and you kind of know who you're going to start. But, we kind of want to still keep track of, who all these guys are, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, we want to say what's up, Sam. Sam is in the live stream right now. I just want to say what's up to him real quick. But yeah, like, who are you dropping, right? There's going to be, end of roster guys, end of bench guys that, you're like, all right, whatever. Like, I don't really care too much about this dude.
Mhm.
So these are the guys that you might be dropping for the guys that we mentioned today, if they are available on your waiver wire, right? And if there are guys at the end of your bench who are less than 50% rostered, and we don't mention them in this show, chances are that, we're not too high on them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and all the guys that we are going to mention today, 50% or less rostered, on most platforms. It really varies platform to platform. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, all these guys are rostered. Like, that's why we're going to go over our top 20 today. All
Right.
right. So we're going to get right into that. Um, but yeah, now there are a bunch of injuries that we might want to talk about and all that. However, we're going to get official practice reports on Wednesday, right? That is like the official first day of practice, and then throughout Thursday and Friday. So that's really when we're going to start going over all that stuff. Okay,
Right.
so yeah, man, are you ready to get right into it?
Yeah. Let's get right into it. I mean, do we have the list? Do we have the list ready to pull up?
We do have the list. Let's share that with whoever's in the live stream here. Um, so let's see if I share the right one. Let's see if that works. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. This looks
There
like
we
it.
go. There we go. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So week 1 waiver wire pickups. All right. So first, the first guy that we have on our list this week is Rondell Moore. And by the way, this list is really my list. Like I put this list together. Okay.
Mhm.
And Zach, I know Zach is gonna come at me and just be like, nah, dude, like that's not the guy I want to pick
I
up.
already
But
came at you a little bit about it today, but
this
chill.
morning, yeah. It's okay though. It's okay though. Let's get right into it. All right, the guy that I'm looking at, like if Rondell Moore is available on waiver wires, like he's a guy that I want on my roster. Okay. Uh he's a little bit banged up right now. Apparently, he has an undisclosed injury.
Mhm.
But Cliff Kingsbury said that he might be good to go. He did practice on Monday, okay, which is a good sign. We probably won't get that full extent, of the injury until the practice report on Wednesday.
Right.
But just talking about Moore real quick, man, like I think people are underestimating Moore this year, and him being available in more than 50% of leagues is telling, right? And I
Yeah.
think what the sentiment is that it's too crowded in Arizona. I think that's basically what it comes down to, and the fact that he didn't really perform in year one.
Mhm.
But this year, what's different about this year is that Moore is going to be on the field for every play this
Yeah.
year. Now that Christian Kirk is gone. I think a lot of people might be assuming Hollywood might be in the slot, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Like Kirk was their slot guy, and I think, and now Moore is going to be their slot guy. That's what everyone's saying. That's what the coaches are saying.
Mhm.
That's what the people in the know are saying, that he's going to be their slot guy. So Marquise Brown, will likely be their perimeter wide receiver. opposite DeAndre Hopkins when he's back from his 6-game suspension.
Right.
Now, the target share conversation is the interesting piece here, right? With Hopkins out for the first 6 games, he's going to be in my lineup as a wide receiver 3,
Right.
especially in PPR. Like, there's no reason why he should be on the wire, especially right now when we know that Hopkins is not going to be playing.
Mhm.
But the more interesting conversation happens is like when Hopkins comes back. There's still a shot that Moore is very involved. Like, this is an offense that's going to pass a ton. They run a ton of plays,
Mhm.
and Moore was used as one of the highest rates at one of the highest rates of any player in the league last year when he was on the field. So the only thing that blocked him from production last year was Kirk being in front of him, right? And now
Mhm.
he doesn't really have to worry about that. And we know Kirk is a good wide receiver. He does a lot of things well, and he got paid this offseason. So it made sense that he played ahead of him. And Rondale Moore's not a perimeter wide receiver, so it's not like he would have played over AJ Green, even though AJ Green was a dinosaur last year, and he still is.
Yeah.
He's still on this team for some reason. But yeah, like that's who I'm looking at number one. Like if there's one guy, if he's available, I'm picking him up at all costs. And honestly, I'm even burning a little bit of fab. Like I'll put down 5%, 7% of my fab, like just off the bat. If that's what
Yeah.
you have to do to get Rondale Moore, especially in PPR leagues.
Yeah, and why not? Part of what makes him so attractive, as a waiver wire pickup is that he is a waiver wire pickup. So he's not a guy that you have to draft. The upside is there. We talked about DeAndre Hopkins being out. Christian Kirk isn't there anymore. So he could be in line for a serious, high workload these first few weeks. And you're not like obviously we don't have him marked as a long-term stash, and that's part of the reason. But Rondale Moore, the first few weeks, he could really just eat because AJ Green, like we talked about, he's a dinosaur. And he's all right, he's not bad, but he's not the AJ Green of old. And Zach Ertz is there. Marquise Brown's going to be there. That kind of scares me a little bit if I'm going after Rondale Moore. But ultimately, as a waiver wire pickup, week 1, just to see how it goes, you can't go wrong. And like you said, trim some of the fat, throw a little bit of your what's it called free agent acquisition budget at him. You'll be fine. I think there's no losing if you pick up Rondale Moore, especially if you get him, just right off the waiver wire, pluck him for nothing. So I'm with you. That one I'm not in disagreement with.
All right, I just want to shout out a couple people in the stream right here. Tyler, what's up, man? Nice to see you. Usman, appreciate you, man. Thanks for joining. Now, Mark has an interesting comment here. He said, I don't think any of these guys will be available on waivers in a 12-man league, to
Right.
be honest. Now, and I want to address this, and I think Mark, I appreciate your comment, man. But here's the thing with this, right? Every league is different. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is spanning across all leagues. Now, yes, will Rondale Moore be more likely to be available in a 10-man league for sure. Most 12-man leagues, I would probably say that, yeah, like, Rondale Moore will most likely, especially competitive leagues, if you know what you're doing, Rondale Moore is probably going to be rostered, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons why Rondale Moore is available in a lot of leagues is like, yeah, people do draft him, but like there might be some more exciting looking players on the waiver wire. People drop guys. Rondale Moore might have been dropped, just because they want to pick up somebody else, like somebody more exciting, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
Romeo Dubs or like Isaiah Pacheco or all of these guys that be like, oh, like you got to stash these guys, and then they draft guys. They drop guys like Rondale Moore. But yeah, like listen, we're trying to address all leagues, okay? And when we're talking about waiver wire pickups, where is the line that we draw? Is it under 40%? Right? Is it under 50? And in my opinion, it should be under 50%, because a lot of these guys are actually available in a lot of leagues. And I totally get in your league if they're not available, but they are available in a lot of leagues. And we're going to get, and that's why we have 20 of these guys and not just the top 10,
Right.
to kind of go over. And if you see my waiver wire article later in the day, you'll see even more. So hopefully somebody in this top 20 will be available in your waiver wire, and you can potentially improve your team that way. Okay. Usman agrees with me. That is true. Okay. I appreciate you, man. All right. So let's move on. So Treylon Burks is number 2. Treylon Burks obviously rostered in a lot of leagues as well, but I'm surprised at this one, to be honest with you. He was like right at 50%. Rondale Moore was like at 40%.
Mm-hmm.
Treylon Burks is like 50-50. This one surprises me, dude, because it's like, and I understand, like, I totally understand what Treylon Burks is like. He was a first round pick, okay? And there is potential for him to be used right away. And I know the sentiment around him, like we were talking about yesterday, is that all offseason, it's taken a while for him to crack that starting lineup. But that does not mean that he should be on waivers. Okay. The fact is that they need playmakers on that offense outside of Derrick Henry. And Burks is their best shot at that. So if they're wise, they figure out how to use him. And reports are that they will be using him right away. And that makes sense. Now, he might not have been my favorite wide receiver prospect in this class, like among like that group of like London, Olave, Garrett Wilson, but like he's potentially walking into some major opportunity here. Like I just don't want this preseason process to blind me from that possibility, right? And
Right.
we
Like with
see this.
Jamar Chase last year.
Yeah, exactly. And like, listen, Jamar Chase is a different case because
Well,
Jamar
yeah,
Chase is like a
absolutely.
legit,
Different
like,
players, yeah.
yeah, he is like a one of one type of prospect, and I don't think Traylon Burks is that, but he has serious playmaking ability, and we all know that, even
Yeah.
though he's not like, maybe like the best separator on the outside or whatever the case may be. But there's no way that he could be on waivers on any league in any league. You got to have him in week one, see how they use him. Because if he explodes in week one, like, are you going to be surprised? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you're gonna be like, oh, I should have known. I shouldn't have followed all that preseason, stuff. And it's good to know that stuff, but at the same time, like look at the guys in front of him. There is a clear path for him to be in the starting lineup and to get a bunch of targets.
Right. And this is a guy that we were talking about right after the draft saying, oh, this guy is walking right in all this opportunity. He can be, offensive rookie of the year. And people were predicting that. And that was based off of what we'd seen in college. And, nobody thought that was crazy or out of the realm of possibility. And now suddenly he has a couple rough preseason games. And the third one wasn't even that bad. It's actually pretty promising. Everybody kind of got turned off to Traylon Burks. He was being drafted, I think, in most leagues a lot higher than he is now. And it's kind of weird to think about because for me, that last performance kind of indicates that, he's getting it together and he's going in a season. They're talking about using him a lot. And the fact that he's flying around on waivers is kind of surprising to me. Now,
It really is.
in most of the leagues I'm in, he's not. But any chance that I can get to pick him up, absolutely. Because he's not someone that you're going to pick up and be like, or at least I'm assuming, you're not going to pick up and have to start immediately. And if he does well, you don't get hurt. So,
Yeah.
like we've talked about Robert Woods. We've kind of talked about this a lot. Robert Woods is on the offense and he's good, not great. He's not going to be a fantasy monster. Ryan Tannehill has to throw to somebody. And if it's going to be anybody making plays, it's going to be Traylon Burks. He's young and it'll just be interesting to see. I'm with Traylon Burks on that.
100%, man. And just to say this too, like you're right. He's not available in any of my leagues either, right? Like
Right.
out of this entire top 10, and we're gonna have a top 20 too, 11 through 20 as well. Out of this entire top 10, I would say the only guys who are available in a couple of my leagues is Khalil Herbert. I would say, and Jarvis Landry. I think those might be in maybe Wandale, but mostly not. Those are the guys. But like, I don't.
If you're in
play
my
any
leagues,
league.
Wandale isn't there.
Yeah, especially yours, dude. 100%. 100%. All right. Moving on to Isaiah McKenzie. I had Isaiah McKenzie at number 1, and then Zach told me not to put him there. But here's like for me with Isaiah McKenzie, it's like now that Cole Beasley's out of the way, McKenzie's likely going to be close to an every down player out of the slot, as long as it's a competitive game for the Bills and they don't, completely shut down and then go into 2 wide receiver sets. Those are the games that Cole Beasley didn't do anything. So if you're wondering why, like he was so like either doing something or not, like that was the reason why. Like in games where they went up big at halftime, Cole Beasley wasn't used much in the second half. But in full PPR leagues, I think he'll be a solid flex play. Now he was a little bit banged up, but he was listed as a full participant in practice on Monday. So he's good to go for Thursday night for the kickoff. And this seems to me like it's going to be a pretty competitive game between those two guys, between those two teams. So it seems like he's going to get plenty of run in that game.
Yeah, no, I hear you. For me, you said about having him at number 1. I'm not too big about having Isaiah McKenzie at the top of my list for waiver wires. It's just because, Gabe Davis is there. You got Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox even. And it's really easy, I think, to be enamored because it's like, okay, this is a fantastic offense. Josh Allen, he's throwing the ball. They're going to be throwing it a ton. And it's just a dynamic offense. It's really easy to kind of get sucked in and be like, yeah, I'll take Isaiah McKenzie as like the bargain barrel Bills receiver. But for me, I'd rather have Treylon Burks because he has a better shot, I think, at being a wide receiver 1 on the Titans, even though it's not Josh Allen throwing the ball, than, say, Isaiah McKenzie has a shot at being wide receiver 2, even. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that I don't think Isaiah McKenzie could be set up for success. It's not that I don't think Isaiah McKenzie isn't going to see those Cole Beasley type games where he's suddenly targeted, 8-10 times just out of nowhere and then cools off again. He'll have those games, but for me, it's just I'm not betting on that this week, especially with this injury. It kind of has me. It's not that I don't think he's going to play. It's just that the first week it might be the breaking in week. He might have to knock off a little rust, that kind of stuff. With the injury, they might take it a little bit easier on him because it's week 1. There's no need to be playing everybody unless you're like trying to win the game late. He'll play. I'm not saying he's not going to play, but I don't think it's going to be too urgent, especially if the Bills are winning. I don't think Isaiah McKenzie is going to be that guy to start.
I'm starting him this week for sure.
You're starting him this week?
I would like if I need. Listen, if I'm in a 12-team PPR league and I'm starting 3 wide receivers and a flex or 2, I will be fine putting him in the flex.
Okay, as a flex.
Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, as a flex.
Yes. Now, I think he's not going to be in my top 36 wide receivers this week, right? I'm not done with my rankings, but he wouldn't be in my top 36. He could be in my top 45. I can see that. I can see that happening. He could be a wide receiver 4. But yeah, no, I think there is a chance that he could potentially get, there are going to be games where he's going to get 8-9 targets. So I'm not a huge fan of him in standard or half point PPR leagues. I'm only interested in him in full PPR leagues because his depth of target will likely not be down the field.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Jahan Dawson, number 4. Another first round pick who can contribute right away, right? We've talked about him all offseason. Someone who's been standing out in camp, someone who can be part of a very tight target distribution between him and Terry McLaurin. If there are 2 clear guys at the top here and there's a possibility that each of them can get 20% plus target share, that's the hope, right? That's what you want.
Yeah.
So he's playing over Curtis Samuel right now. He is a bet on talent. He's a bet on draft capital. And by all accounts in camp, he's been lighting up. So and by the way, he was able to produce in college with his own, shitty quarterback, at Penn State. So he's used to the shitty quarterback situation. He's with one right now. And you never know. Sam Howell might end up. By the way, Sam Howell, we talked about it a few weeks ago. Sam Howell, he's impressing. And there's a possibility that we might see him at some point this season over Carson Wentz. So that'll be pretty interesting. Also, Carson Wentz didn't have a good camp apparently. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, man, I think Jahan Dawson is somebody that he's obviously going pretty late in drafts compared to all the other rookies. Makes sense, quarterback situation and all that.
Yeah.
But sometimes, listen, look at what happened with Jalen Waddle last year. Were you going into the season oh my God, his quarterback situation is great? No, it's because Jalen Waddle was a good receiver, so he got it done. So and I understand it's a different situation because Terry McLaurin is the clear number 1 over there. That's what we think. So a little bit different situation, but if a wide receiver is good, they usually find a way to produce.
Right. Absolutely. I'm with you. The other thing that I'm kind of looking at, especially we're talking about waiver wire pickups for this week. The Commanders play the Jaguars week 1. Am I not mistaken? That sounds like a pretty good matchup to me. Granted, Carson Wentz had his struggles last week of the season against the Jaguars with the Colts, but we're not talking about that right now. But Jahan Dawson, I think he's set up to be the immediate wide receiver 2 in Washington. I don't think that Curtis Samuel is going to challenge him very much. The tight end, Logan Thomas, I don't know if he's playing, but if it's not Logan Thomas, it's somebody that's not going to be too relevant. If it's not Terry McLaurin catching the ball, who's going to be catching the ball? I don't think it's going to be Antonio Gibson. It might be J.D. McKissick, but they're not going to be targeting J.D. McKissick 15 yards down the field like Jahan Dawson. So this one is an easy waiver wire pickup for me. And actually somebody, I draft late and I'm surprised he even makes it to the waiver in some leagues because I'm just high on him. He's a solid, and I keep calling him solid, and you don't want to be undercutting him saying that he's just a solid receiver and that's it. No, he's very good fundamentally when you watch him play. And I think that is what kind of makes him, you say he's been dealing with a crappy quarterback situation. That's what kind of makes him quarterback proof, where he will produce regardless of who's starting at quarterback. I think he'll be fine with Carson Wentz. If Sam Howell goes in, that would be exciting. I do like Sam Howell. And I think that, I don't want to say that he's going to elevate the offense, but, it would be interesting to see what kind of upside Jahan Dawson has. But even with Carson Wentz at quarterback, I mean, this one's just kind of screaming for me. Just pick him up. You can't get hurt. Faraz, I think you're on mute.
Oh, so sorry.
Welcome back.
Oh, thanks, guys. I took a little break. You know what I'm saying? I took a little break. Just wanted to, make sure that, the production side is all good.
Yeah. Just seeing if we're awake. That's all.
Yeah. No, I am awake. I did wake up really early this morning, but that's another story. Number 5, Rashad White, man. Like, he's a league-winning handcuff, right? That's the reason why I have him here. He's the type of guy that should be on rosters. Like, I want him on my bench. I'm stashing him all year long. Okay. If Fournette were to get hurt, White has a shot at winning you your league, right? So like, these type of guys shouldn't be on the waiver wire. Like, if you pick him up, you don't drop him. Like, if you drafted him, don't drop him. We might see glimpses of his upside if this report of the Bucs wanting to lighten Lenny's workload is true, but by then it might be too late to try to pick him up, especially if he looks good. So, he's a potential elite receiver out of the backfield, and he's on an elite offense.
Right. And I know you loved him coming out of college too, even before he went to the Bucs.
Alvin Kamara vibes.
Yeah. We had that one post. I remember that. But yeah, with Rashad White, this is just a classic case of handcuff, but because he's so young, and he would be on a great offense if anything happens. This is definitely edging on that elite handcuff territory. And you don't want to talk about it, obviously, just yet, because obviously we don't want Leonard Fournette to get hurt, but at the same time, you also don't know how he's going to pan out. But we've seen what he's done in college. You can bet on him for free. Pick him up as a waiver. You can bet on him, and if it works out for you, great. If not, there's no problem having an insurance player like that on your bench. Just don't do your whole bench up with handcuffs and that's it. You know what I'm saying?
I love that strategy. I'll have. No, I'm just kidding. I do love like having like a good portion of my bench, like maybe like 2 spots as like potential 3-down handcuffs. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll talk about Khalil Herbert at number 7 in a minute, but like if I have like a Rashad White and a Khalil Herbert, like let's say I have 6 bench spots, right? So I have 4 bench spots that are guys that I could plug in if I need to. And then maybe 2 of those bench spots I might have as like 3-down handcuffs, like Khalil Herbert or Rashad White. That's kind of how let's do it, because you never know what happens, right? Like, you have these guys on your bench just as like potential, like, league winning guys, just kind of just at the ready to potentially blow up, if there was an injury ahead of them. All right. So Christian Watson at number 6. Now, you might be surprised that I didn't put Romeo Doubs here instead, because he's available in a bunch of leagues as well. But Watson was banged up, right, all offseason, right? He's back now. He's practicing. Aaron Rodgers is already talking him up a little bit, on Pat McAfee. But Watson was the guy that they took, right, early second round. We know that he has a freak skill set, right? His combine and his athletic profile and all that is just like off the charts, right? Now, you might have to be a little bit patient with him, right? He has tremendous upside, obviously, but he did miss camp. He's coming in a little bit late. Coming in from the FCS, he does have it. Like, Matt LaFleur literally just talked about it. He still has a lot to learn, but they're trying to bring him up to speed pretty quickly. And I think even if he doesn't know the entire playbook, I think he can still contribute. So, I'll have Romeo Doubs a few spots down, and I'll say this: I think Doubs has a better chance at being more valuable in week 1, right? Like after week 1, you might think like, all right, Doubs is the guy, right? But he'll probably, and Doubs will probably get more playing time. Like, Watson missed a bunch of time during camp. Doubs can have a decent game this week, especially if Allen Lazard misses, by the way, because he's a little bit banged up with an undisclosed injury. We'll find out more about that on Wednesday. And you figure Sami Watkins is probably going to be starting for them too. Like, he's the guy that no one's talking about because he always disappoints in fantasy.
Except in week 1, this could be
week
second
one.
or
That's
third
just,
coming up.
that's
Week one, Sami Watkins. You know,
for
maybe
sure.
we're
For sure.
overlooking this.
We probably are. He should probably be in like all your DFS lineups, right?
Right.
But Watson does have a chance of playing this week. And even if Dotson doesn't, if Watson doesn't play, Dubs, you might want to roster Dubs. Like, let's say both these guys are available, you might want to roster Dubs before week one if Watson doesn't play. If you have the choice between the two, right? Because Dubs will simply be more valuable after week one. And if Dubs doesn't do anything after week one, even after getting some playing time with a couple of guys out, then you might know that you might want to invest in Christian Watson instead. And Christian Watson's value won't change if he doesn't play in week one. So no one's going to be racing to pick him up off the waiver wire, if that makes sense.
Right. Because there's the chance, that, he could play week one. So if no one's running and trying to get that a piece of Christian Watson, now it's not going to change in a week. You're absolutely right with that. I think that it's just me. I would pick Christian Watson up as talent. I wouldn't actually, me personally, I'm not chasing Romeo Dubs. I'm chasing Christian Watson if I'm going to go pick up a Packers receiver, just because he's such a freak athlete. And I think that Christian Watson is going to be closer, and I'm not comparing him to Devontae Adams, but would be closer to the dynamic level of play of Devontae Adams for Aaron Rodgers than Romeo Dubs is going to be. I think Dubs is more of a, quarterback friendly kind of guy, but it's really difficult to project. I'm betting on, draft capital with Christian Watson and what I know from his athletic profile, because we know Dubs isn't necessarily, gold when it comes to his athletic profile. So I would go with Christian Watson. I agree with Christian Watson higher than Romeo Dubs.
Yeah, right. And it's a question from SJ Creation. Rashad White or Christian Watson, both are available in my league as free agents. And Rashad White's number 5 here. Christian Watson's number 6. So I'll probably go Rashad White. And, I just want that elite handcuff on my bench. Wide receivers, you can get more likely to be available as the season goes on. These type of high upside guys, Rashad White, especially if anything were to happen to Fournette, you have a league winner. Christian Watson is not necessarily, the archetype of a league winner at this point right now.
Mm-hmm.
I do want him on my team, but I think I'd rather have Rashad White right now.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to Khalil Herbert, number 7. Khalil Herbert too, like one of those guys. Simply put, 3-down handcuff. We saw that in the preseason, for David Montgomery. So there aren't too many of those on the waiver wire. So we saw Herbert, was able to hold it down last year. He was able to do his thing when he got his opportunity. Solid stash. He's somebody that, you have on your bench just in case Montgomery gets hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one thing to note for me with Khalil Herbert is that he's been with the Bears at least a season or two, compared to other guys. Like, you said there aren't too many 3-down handcuffs. Like, you compare him to Rashad White. He is a rookie. We don't know how they're planning to implement him, but we have an idea of how Khalil Herbert might be used as we've seen him, and how he might go about producing. So I'm a little bit more comfortable picking up like a guy over Khalil Herbert over like Tyler Algier, who we're going to talk about. But those rookies, we haven't really seen them play, and it inspires a little bit more confidence in me taking a guy that I've seen play, that I've seen used, and that can definitely produce the way I want him to, if as a handcuff, should anything happen to Montgomery.
Yeah. Let's talk about Algier. He comes in at number 8. If he's available and I have the room, I'd love to see what his role is in week 1, right? Like, we don't know what that looks like. And, sometimes you have the room and you're able to put a guy on your bench, see what the usage is. And if it's not great, you can drop him or you can be patient. It's up to you. But, I know there's a thought of Damian Williams being ahead of him on early downs right now, but Damian Williams isn't that good, right? And Algier can be a monster on early downs. So that's what I want to see. I want to see what his role is. If he's the early down guy, what's the split looking like? Because I think he can be pretty good if he's given the opportunity.
Right. And no, I hear you. I think that he's going to make his money as a goal line back, if anything. You mentioned Damian Williams, but also Cordero Patterson. I don't know how that he's going to be implemented. The end of last season kind of was him coming back down to earth, where, we saw the splits early in the season. Cordero Patterson was surprising everybody and he looked ageless, but then, back after the season, he was pretty inefficient, didn't score too many points. And now I saw reports somewhere it's like he's focusing on chasing the kick return touchdown record. And that might result in him getting a few touches lowered in the backfield. So You talk about Damian Williams, but Cordell Patterson's also there. It's kind of looking like, I don't want to call it a three-headed monster, but it's just one of those backfields where it's like you're not sure exactly who's going to get what touches. But I'd actually bet on Tyler Algier to get those touches that are going to be the most valuable. Not necessarily maybe the passing game, but money downs. It'll be goal line. It'll be red zone. Those kinds of plays. I'm all in on Tyler Algier.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a good backfield to attack. Like I talk about, there's a lot of ambiguity here,
Yeah.
and there is a potential drop off in talent, right? And I don't think Damian Williams is like a good running back. So, he's okay. Like he can get it done with opportunity.
Yeah.
But I do think that this could turn into Algier on early downs, Cordell Patterson, on passing downs type of situation. Now, if he's only the early down back, like there's obviously limited upside, given Atlanta might not be the best offense. So just keep that in mind, right? But there is some value to be had in an early down guy if he's getting 15 plus carries, and if Atlanta is in a game, the chance to get 20, right? Like, but is he going to be too involved in the pass game? We don't know. He was a capable pass catcher at BYU. Okay, he wasn't, and he was not overly efficient, but he was able to catch the ball pretty effectively. Okay. All right, let's move on to your boy Wanda Robinson. I have him at number 9. Is he too low?
I don't want to say he's too low. The thing, I love Wanda Robinson. I hate the offense he's on, but the opportunity is going to be there. So it's for me, I don't want to say that, I'm betting on opportunity. That's it. Wanda Robinson is very talented. And that's why I saw what he played. And the Giants obviously like him because they took him in the second round, which was much higher than we thought he would go. I know, before the draft was going on. So he's a little undersized, but I look at the Giants offense, Kenny Golladay is going to be a non-factor. I don't care what anybody says. I don't think he's going to be much of a factor at all. And he does have Daniel Jones throwing to him, but just the volume's going to be there. He's obviously a playmaker. Like I said, the Giants, I think they honestly bet on him taking him in the second round. And they clearly plan to use him. He's going to be working opposite Kadarius Toney. Like, there's nothing telling me that he's not going to do well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also Daniel Jones is fine. Like, he's targeting the slot just fine. Like when Sterling Shepard, was running out of the slot early last year, he was killing it.
Right.
Sterling Shepard was like almost like he was a guy like you cannot bench like early on last year. So Wanda Robinson, he's going to be their starting slot wide receiver. He's a first rounder. Wait, was he first round or second round?
He was second round.
He was second round, right? And there's a chance like he is heavily targeted, right?
I think that chance is pretty high because we talked about, the preseason. Kenny Golladay was on the field with Daniel Jones for, I think it was 20-some snaps, 22 or 27 snaps, and he didn't get a single look. And Daniel Jones was just looking for everybody else but Kenny Golladay. So,
and these guys weren't even playing.
Right, I know.
These other guys weren't even playing. Like Golladay was the only like legitimate, like quote unquote legitimate bona fide wide receiver who was on the field with them. Wandale was. I don't think he was on the field. Kadarius Toney wasn't on the field. So why are you not targeting Golladay? It's probably because he's not worth targeting.
Yeah, right. No, that's what I'm saying. It's just Wanda Robinson, I just feel like, has the chance to step right in and almost be like the Kadarius Toney for the Giants. Just again this year, like he was last year, if that makes sense. I'm all in on Wanda.
Now, if Kadarius Toney stays healthy, like he'd be my bet to lead the Giants in targets.
Well, yeah.
But the man seems to stay banged up, right? Like that's kind of where Robinson comes in for me. So taking a shot to see what his usage looks like in week 1. It might get a little tricky, when Kadarius Toney is healthy and he's getting a full complement of snaps. But as of right now, he's definitely worth taking a shot on to see how they use him.
Mm-hmm. And here, it looks like Usman put something in the chat. The way we talk about Robinson makes him feel iffy about Toney. I'm not trying to make anybody feel iffy about Toney. I'm trying to get people tuned in on Robinson.
Yeah.
There's no reason to be worried about Toney.
And I'll say this. Who would I rather roster on the Giants, among the Giants wide receivers? It's Toney. And it's not close for me because I don't think Wandale has the type of upside that Toney has. Okay, Toney, listen, I wasn't a big fan of Toney at all coming out of college because he's super raw, right? Like he only played wide receiver for a couple years in his life. So him coming in, it wasn't a big fan. However, he completely changed his game last year. And his yards per route run were all the way up there. There's a lot of indicators with Kadarius Toney that points him to being a potential superstar. So his upside is like top 12 wide receiver. Like I'm talking about like at some point in his career. So that's the guy that I want. However, he gets banged up a lot. And that's my only issue with him. So Wandale is that guy that you kind of have on your roster who can coincide with Toney, because Toney is likely going to play on the outside anyway. And then on top of that, you have Wandale potentially being second in targets. Obviously Saquon's going to get a bunch of targets as well. But he's kind of that insurance plan just in case Toney doesn't work out.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on to Jarvis Landry. Like we've talked about this before. With Jarvis, but he's maintained a 25% target share since 2015, every single year. Okay. So I don't want to assume that he's just lost in the shuffle in New Orleans. Like I'm not going to hold that Cleveland offense against him, given that the passing game was an afterthought here. Okay. Like over there, like they didn't care about the pass game. It was all run game. And if they had to pass it, they'll pass it. Like it was a weird offense. Like OBJ killed it. Like as soon as he got to the Rams, like it was like he was never on the Browns. Like we couldn't even remember how bad he was there. He couldn't get anything going in Cleveland. And now Landry is paired with a very fantasy friendly quarterback. So I understand that he's not the most exciting player to have on your roster, but like I think he could surprise, and I think he'd be very useful. And I would not be surprised if he ends up turning into an every week wide receiver 3 at some point this season.
So yeah, I could see that happening. Jarvis Landry, he's very savvy with his route running, and he's home in New Orleans, and he's with a much better, from a fantasy perspective, quarterback than he was on the Browns. But the only thing that kind of has red flags for me is, like I said, Michael Thomas is there, and if he comes back and he's anything close to what he was, that's a target machine. Chris Olave they drafted in the first round, and I actually really like him, especially because he's young. And, Jameis Winston's going to have just as much experience throwing to Chris Olave as he does Jarvis Landry. I think if he's going to lean one way, he's going to take the younger guy, the faster guy, the guy that might be more, improvisational. Yeah, explosive, that kind of thing. So that kind of has me leaning away from Jarvis Landry. But then, you look, like you said, about his target share, it's always there, regardless of where he's been. And he's a name that kind of has respect around the league. That he's a good receiver. He just hasn't produced recently, and I put most of that on the Browns. The name is really the only thing that kind of carries it and for me and lets me say, okay, maybe he's worth the pickup, because he could get back to what he was with the Dolphins back when he started his career. But yeah, I'm okay with Jarvis Landry, especially at 10. It's all right. But
yeah, and he's not
there
like
are other guys. I'd rather have
yet.
Wanda Robinson. Yeah, no, he's not super old.
He's not super old. He's 29 years old. Yeah, he's 29. Like he's gonna turn 30 in November. Okay. But he's not there yet. Now, and I totally agree with you. Like, would I rather have Michael Thomas? Yes. Would I rather have Chris Olave? For sure. But I think there is
would
a
I rather
path
have
for
Jahan
Jarvis.
Dawson? Yes.
Yeah,
Me,
yeah,
personally.
no, for sure. That's why Landry's at number 10 here, right? Like,
yeah.
All these picks are in order, and I know that there's some questions in the chat too about like who should I take, and then these are in order. So this is the order that I would pick these guys up if they're available. But I think there is a path here also, right? Michael Thomas, like not completely trustworthy right now. I'm fine taking Michael Thomas at his price in drafts, but the risk is baked into his price. Now, there is risk there. So if anything happens to Michael Thomas, if he's not available for whatever reason, Landry should definitely be on your radar. And he could be a contributor right away. And I wouldn't be surprised if he contributes before Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is a great talent, but listen, we've seen this before. We've seen veterans, do their thing, if they're on the roster before rookie wide receivers. We're just so used to some of these really good rookie wide receivers coming in and doing their thing right away. It doesn't always happen. Even though I would love for Chris Olave to do it because he's super explosive and could do a lot of big things with Jameis Winston, But Chris Olave isn't available in a lot of leagues, or if any.
Right.
All right. Let's move on to the next set. So we're gonna go through 11 through 20 now. So let me go ahead and share that real quick. Let's see if I can do this properly. Let's that's us. That's us. All right. There we go. All right. There we go. So coming out of number 11 is Romeo Dubs. And we kind of touched on this situation a little bit earlier. I don't think we have to go too much into that. But Romeo Dubs, obviously he was killing it right in camp. There are a few wide receivers, like I mentioned, there are a few Packers wide receivers banged up. We might see Dubs get a little bit more playing time than we were initially anticipating, right? So he obviously great camp, great preseason. Rodgers has been talking highly of him. We'll see if he can put it together against better competition now, right? Legit number one defenses, good competition. So solid wide receiver to have on your bench in week 1 to see what he got, when the lights come on with Aaron Rodgers. Let's see how much playing time he gets. It'll be interesting to see.
Right, definitely. And just my one disclaimer, especially, for week 1 waiver wire, you're picking up these players maybe to keep on your bench a couple weeks. Like, just because a player isn't a long-term stash that you see here doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep them on your bench even if they don't perform in week 1. Like this Packers, especially with the Packers, I feel like the receivers can go any way every week. Sami Watkins might have a big week 1, and then Romeo Dubs doesn't do much week 1. You'll be like, oh well, I don't need this guy on my team. You drop him, and then he has a huge week 2. With waivers, that's kind of the game you play. If you're gonna pick someone up, don't just drop them immediately the next week unless they're injured, obviously. But usually you're picking up a player to keep them on your bench, stash them, and then if it works out, that's good. You give them more than just this week 1, because week 1 is all about overreactions and overproduction in some cases for some players. So don't just take week 1 as scripture and that's how it's going to be the rest of the season. Give them a little bit of time. And that's why I'm talking about Romeo Dubs and Christian Watson. They could go anyway. Sami Watkins is there. There's so many different ways it could play out. Don't panic. If you're going to pick these guys up, keep them on your bench. At least I'd say week 2.
No, for sure. That's a great point. And some things to keep in mind too is when you don't see the production, look at how they were used. What was their snap percentage? Were they on the field? How many routes were they running? Were they even involved? Who was playing ahead of them? Those type of things can play into your decision of whether you drop those guys after week 1 or not. If you did that, you would have dropped Justin Jefferson after week 1. You would have dropped him after week 2. And then week 3, he blew up and it was a wrap from there. And now you're super sad. Alvin Kamara, same thing.
Right.
A lot of these guys start slow a little bit and then they pick it up week 3, week 4. Happens all the time. One guy that could potentially pop off week 1 is Alec Pierce. He comes in at number 12. Second round guy, made his way up the depth chart all the way, to what seems like number 2 on the depth chart behind Michael Pittman. Him and Paris Campbell have been fighting for that job, but I can totally see Pierce being the wide receiver 2 opposite Pittman at this point, while Campbell's in the slot. And I have Campbell down at 18. Or do I have him at 18? Where do I have him? I don't think I even have. I have him at 19 there. Yeah. And part of the reason I have Pierce first is because I think he'll be the guy when the Colts go to wide receivers, when they're in 12 personnel, which they do a whole lot. He might not be the guy who ends up leaving the field a whole lot. So, if a guy is a number 2 wide receiver for Matt Ryan on a potentially good offense, might want to have that guy on your bench, to see what's up, especially since they've been making a little bit of noise in the offseason.
Right, definitely. And for me, Alec Pierce, his position here on the waiver wire, even the fact that he is a waiver wire target for us, is pretty much contingent on the fact that Matt Ryan is there. And, Matt Ryan isn't a chump throwing the ball, but he's going to have a much better offensive line than he did in Atlanta. And we've seen Matt Ryan, back 2016, he had the heyday of his career. He was just slinging it. He can throw. He was, granted, he was throwing to Julio Jones, but Julio Jones was very good. And I'm sure there were guys behind him that were getting plenty of targets, plenty of production, outside of Julio Jones on those teams. And that's what I kind of expect to see this year, because Michael Pittman, I'm not going to call Michael Pittman and Julio Jones, but they're of the same mold. They're both big receivers, Julio Jones and Michael Pittman. So Matt Ryan might feel more at home, here, now that he wasn't very good last season in Atlanta because he didn't have Julio. But Julio's interesting. He's an interesting case. I'm going off on a bunch of tangents about different players, but the whole point is I'm getting tied up in the Julio talk because suddenly he's good again. He's on the Bucs. You know what I'm saying? People are actually looking at, picking him up. But Matt Ryan, he can throw it, and he's going to be in a much better situation than he was the past few years. I think people might be discounting that. Alec Pierce, as a wide receiver too, definitely has the opportunity to outperform. Definitely where he's being drafted.
No, for sure, man, for sure. And you talk about all these wide receivers who play with Matt Ryan, who was extremely fantasy friendly over the seasons. You got,
Right.
you got Julio, you got Calvin Ridley, you got
Russell Gage.
uh Russell Gage. You have, man, like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm blanking.
Roddy White.
I'm relatively old. Yeah, there you go. Roddy White is one of them.
Yeah.
There's more, and I'm old and I can't remember it, which is super sad. But there were other guys. Jesus Christ! I woke up way too early this morning. I need another cup of coffee. That's what I need. See, I don't have my cup of coffee with me. I only have a glass of water. That's what I need. That's what I'm gonna do tomorrow, guys. That's what I'm gonna do for sure. So let's move on to Mike Davis. Like J.K. Dobbins, he's looking a little iffy for week 1. He might not play. There is a possibility that he does, but he might not. Gus Edwards is on the pup, so he's not playing. The Ravens did sign Kenyon Drake, but I do not expect Kenyon Drake to play over Mike Davis. If Dobbins is in fact out, I think Davis is in the RB2 conversation this week. And if Dobbins does play, I still think Davis will be very involved. And I think he'll be a desperate flex if you need one for, whatever reason in week 1. You likely don't need a desperate flex in week 1 unless you have like 3 wide receivers, 2 flexes, you're starting 2 running backs also, then sure, I can understand why you would start Mike Davis. If J.K. Dobbins were to play, if J.K. Dobbins doesn't play, I feel like it's going to be the Mike Davis show for the most part.
Right. For me, Mike Davis, I agree. Desperate flex. I'm not betting on him doing too much. Granted, he might be the starter in Baltimore, and this is a run-heavy offense. But what we've seen from Mike Davis in the past few years is just a floor guy. This guy, I don't see very much upside with him. It's like at the end of the day, I'm sitting back, I'm looking at Mike Davis with his 11.2 fantasy points in relief, and I'm like, it was a good effort. Like, it's not anything that's going to wow me. I don't think that Mike Davis has the value that I'm looking for necessarily in waiver wire pickup. I'd much rather shoot for upside of another player. He's a little bit older. Like I said, he's a floor guy. You can take him as a waiver if you need someone to start. Like
only if you need somebody to start this week.
If you have J.K. Dobbins, like then you might want to consider
if you were
picking him up.
If you were depending on J.K. and then you didn't draft like a Chase Edmonds or like someone like that, or like someone who you can plug in, then in those situations, then you might have to pick up Mike Davis. But yeah, you're right. Like this is only if you need for this week. You want to pick up guys who can potentially pop off in week 1, and then you can use the rest of the season, right? Not guys who you can plug in week 1, and then I might rather just take the L, in that position, rather than picking up Mike Davis. But it really depends on your situation.
So and that's what we have Mike Davis on the list for a reason. It's because he's in line for technically RB1 opportunity in Baltimore in week 1. If that's the way the cards fall, if J.K. Dobbins doesn't start, that's obviously worth taking a shot on. But I personally like shooting upside other ways. But there's a reason he's on this list. You can pick him up, you'll be fine. I wouldn't expect him to be very fantasy relevant outside the first few weeks. After that,
100%. And if J.K. Dobbins is back week 2, like, yeah, it's a wrap. It's over. Because Gus Edwards is going to come back at some point after week 4, and he's going to be the RB2 behind J.K.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's move on to Michael Gallup at number 14. He's coming off the ACL injury, but he shouldn't be on waivers. Okay, like he avoided the pup list, and I think that's kind of like the hard part of it, because if he wasn't the pup, he'll be on everybody's IR in everyone's IR spot, right?
Yeah.
But he might be back in a couple of weeks. He'll likely go straight to the top of the depth chart, right behind CeeDee Lamb. There will likely be a slight dip in production, based on wide receivers and them coming off of ACLs, but he still should be able to contribute, in a very fantasy friendly offense, right? So, you might have to wait a few weeks, but I think he's worth the stash if you have 6 or more bench spots.
I think so, definitely, because this is a Cowboys offense that's going to be throwing the ball an awful lot. And, CeeDee Lamb, we want him to be hyper targeted, but ultimately Michael Gallup's going to come back, and Dak has a connection with Michael Gallup that, we've seen plenty of times work wonders. It's just because Michael Gallup hasn't been very healthy in his career that, people don't talk about him more, I feel like. But Michael Gallup, he's the Cowboys wide receiver too, and if you could get him on the waivers, like, oh my God. Maybe you don't have him week 1. Big whoop, We weren't expecting him to play week 1 anyway. I wasn't expecting him to come back and maybe be available week 2. I thought this was more of a midseason thing. and that Jalen Tolbert would be the guy, going in to start the season. And then the value would flip. Michael Gallup would have the same value as Jalen Tolbert did in the second half of the season. But that's clearly not the case. So, like, Michael Gallup is back earlier than anyone would have expected. And this is, I think, the same Michael Gallup, unless he's drastically changed after his ACL, the same Michael Gallup that we've seen his whole career, big play threat. And that's what we love to see.
Yeah, and I wouldn't overvalue, I wouldn't overvalue the fact that, like, the first 4 weeks of the season, like, I'm not overvaluing that, right? Like, if he can hit a stride by week 4, week 5, week 6, like, that is more valuable because you'd rather have him for the stretch run, right? It's not like you need to depend on Michael Gallup anyway for the first 5, 6 weeks. Like, you don't, because you drafted a whole bunch of other guys before Michael Gallup that should be in your starting lineup, right? He's a guy that could help you down the stretch, though, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have Jalen Tolbert over there at number 16. I have Sky Moore right after Michael Gallup. I do think Sky Moore has a little bit more upside with Jalen Tolbert than Jalen Tolbert overall, but you have to be more patient with Sky Moore. Sky Moore is a little bit more of a stash because Mecole Hardman is, in the preseason, he was playing ahead of him still, so he might not see a bunch of playing time, even in 3 wide receiver stats, off the bat. But the hope is that he can beat Hardman, right, and be close to a full-time player sooner than later. So, you kind of want pieces of the Chiefs offense. And, on top of that, like, Moore, is an impressive wide receiver. He was one of my favorite prospects coming out. He had a near, he had one of the best scores for me in my rookie draft kit. So I'm impressed with him. I just hope that he's able to, win that job. And he might be their slot guy and might get some work out of the backfield too at some point. But I kind of want to round that out with Jalen Tolbert, though, since we were talking about Michael Gallup. Like, no matter who is on the outside, whether it's Noah Brown or Michael Gallup, right, coming back, like, it seems to me like Tolbert, like, no matter what, is locked into the Cowboys starting slot role. Like, that's what it's looking like right now. And that should have value regardless of who is in or out, whether Gallup is back or not. And Tolbert, like, I think he's a little bit of a sleeper right now. So, if he's available in your league, I stash this dude before Sunday.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Tolbert was, granted he was playing against FCS competition, but he was just tearing it up. You know what I'm saying? His stats were ridiculous. And he's on an offense that, is going to, like I said, be throwing a lot and going back to Michael Gallup, that kind of thing. But, just because CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup are getting targets doesn't mean that nobody else is going to get targets. Jalen Tolbert's going to be there. And, I don't want to say he's going to be Cedric Wilson-esque in terms of production, but I think Jalen Tolbert can do a lot more than Cedric Wilson did with the volume that Cedric Wilson got last season, if that makes sense. 5 or 6 targets to Jalen Tolbert is going to turn into a lot more than 5 or 6 targets to Cedric Wilson. So Jalen Tolbert's definitely a bet on talent. He had a iffy preseason, at least from what I heard. He had a couple drops, and that's to be expected. He was a 3rd-round receiver, and he's breaking in a new offense. But this is an upside pick. I have no problem stashing him, but I wouldn't stash both Tolbert and Gallup on my team if I was doing that.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I hear that. Now, Nico Collins is another wide receiver, interesting one. The wide receiver 2 job in Houston, is open. Right, the Texans will likely be throwing the ball a ton this year, with them being underdogs in most games. And apparently Collins has taken another step. But, just be wary that, he wasn't the best prospect coming out. Okay, so he would be a little bit of an outlier if he does have, like, huge production this year. Like, I would really just focus on Brandon Cooks. Don't worry about Nico Collins taking anything away from him, right? It's more like, can Nico Collins kind of take advantage of some opportunity, right? And him kind of having that job wide open. Will he take advantage of that, right? That's the question. But, I think he's worth a stash, like, if these other guys are not available.
And especially if Davis Mills, is a good quarterback. Forward. Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
And I'd say even last season, he was actually impressive given the situation because he was, thrown in the fire on a bad team, and he actually was serviceable, I think, compared to what we've seen from other backups in Houston recently. So I think Davis Mills, obviously Nico Collins' production will be contingent on Davis Mills being a pretty decent passer, but I'm willing to bet on that. I think Davis Mills, I think the Texans overall could be a surprise team, especially with Damian Pierce, going back to Damian Pierce. He looks to be the starter, and I think that having a nice engine in the run game, like Damian Pierce, will open up the pass game, and Nico Collins could definitely benefit from that.
No, for sure, for sure. And you know what's funny? I actually moved Nico Collins down to 19 before the show. So I actually have Pacheco at 17, Paris Campbell at 18, and Nico Collins at 19. So Pacheco is a stash as well. Not as excited as I was about him earlier in the offseason, right? The downside in this backfield with this backfield is that it could continue to be a three-way committee. The upside is that CEH continues to not play so well, right? Which would open some opportunity for a guy like Pacheco who has speed, can be a legit receiver. He's like a playmaker type of guy, right? CEH is not a playmaker, right? He's like a capable, give him the ball, he'll give you 4 yards, he can catch the ball, whatever. But like,
kind
if
of
someone
sounds
like
like
Pacheco,
Zeke.
if some, like I said, but yeah, but Zeke feels like he has a lot more like, I don't know, like, they just want to give him the ball, right? Like it's almost like
Volume.
they don't want him to lose his job, right? Like I don't see a world where like they're just like handing the job over to somebody else. But with the Chiefs, I can see it, right? Like if someone like why is Pacheco taking reps away from CEH, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like so, like if someone like him gets more opportunity in this offense with Andy Reid, that'd be pretty exciting to me.
Yeah. Maybe it's because he's wearing number 10 and they're having flashbacks to Tyreek Hill already. But,
that's what happens with me, man. Whenever I see him with number 10, I'm like, ooh,
yeah,
that's exciting.
No, it is. It is kind of exciting. I don't have a problem with taking Isaiah Pacheco and put him on the bench. Like I don't have any problem with that because we haven't seen him play yet.
He's a stash. He's a stash, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of keep him on your bench for a couple weeks. See how that backfield plays out.
Yeah, and the thing to remember with this is we're talking about the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going to be a good offense as long as Patrick Mahomes is there. They're going to be a good offense, and that means anybody's liable to be catching passes. And we know Isaiah Pacheco has kind of been, in line for that receiving role, especially over other guys that we thought would kind of, be contributing there. What's his name? Jerick McKinnon, that kind of thing. He's moved his way up the depth chart enough where it's like, yeah, you can justify taking him as a stash. Absolutely. There's no reason to not say that he can't be. I know a couple people are like, what's all the big hype about Isaiah Pacheco? It's that he's talented and that he's moved up in a good offense with plenty of competition. I think that's very promising. I'm happy to keep that on my bench.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. All right. Paris Campbell, we mentioned him earlier. Here's the thing with Campbell. He has to stay healthy, right? If he's healthy, he can be productive, right? Matt Ryan at quarterback, it's possible Campbell, is one of his favorite targets. Like we'll see who Ryan prefers between him and Alec Pierce. Yeah. I have a feeling that if Paris Campbell stays healthy out of the slot, he can do some things. Frank Reich loves him too. So they're giving him a chance. They've been giving Paris Campbell a bunch of chances over the last couple of years, and this might be his last one. But he's worth paying attention to as long as he's healthy. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think so too. Like just, I'd rather take Alec Pierce. That's why he's at number 12 and Paris Campbell's at number, 18. But, just be prepared. Be prepared to not have Paris Campbell live up to my expectations.
Be prepared to have Paris Campbell on your IR, maybe.
I've had expectations of Paris Campbell for a couple years now. It didn't really work out. Now coming at number 20, a quarterback, Jameis Winston. Like, we've seen that Winston is capable from a fantasy perspective, like a ton, right? So like he was on a run heavy offense last year when he was quarterback, same team, but run heavy scheme. Didn't have any wide receivers, but he was still able to maintain some efficiency there. So this year we should see a much more pass heavy offense. The coaches have said so, and they have some legit weapons, right? We talked about them earlier. So, he'll probably be, I would say that he'll probably be the most picked up quarterback after week 1. Like if he throws 3 touchdowns and 275, you should not be surprised.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised either. And I keep going back, we talk about, we know Jameis Winston as the volatile guy, the 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions guy from, 2019, yesteryear. And, you kind of want to hang on to that. But what I saw from Jameis Winston before he got injured last season was a guy that cleaned up that interceptions issue, the bad decisions. That was all cleaned up. He was efficient, and he wasn't off target. He has slight, I'd say, rushing upside. It's not that he can't move. I'm just looking as this is a good offense. Michael Thomas is going to be there to lean on. Chris Olave is going to be there. Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Like, absolutely, this is a good pick for waiver wire. If he's there in your league, take him, because I'm actually a big Jameis Winston guy. I'm finding just talking about it because just the offense that he's on and what I saw and how he played, there was nothing uninspiring about it last season. I don't think he had under 10 points in a game. And obviously 10 points isn't the bar to clear, but he had that 5 touchdown game against the Packers to open the season. And remember that? That set the fantasy world on fire. That was something. So Jameis Winston, obviously we know the upside's there. There's nothing else to really, hear about. Jameis Winston, pick him up. You could have yourself a QB2 every week, QB2 on your hands.
There's one thing that Zach didn't mention. That was Jervis Landry. He has him too.
Oh, right. Jervis Landry. How could I forget?
All right. So that pretty much does it for the top 20. I just quickly want to mention before we sign off, potential top available handcuffs. Khalil Herbert, we mentioned him. Mark Ingram, if Alvin Kamara were to get hurt, he could potentially get some more work there. Don't know if he's going to be the every down back, but he'll get a lot of work. Zamir White, he's not a 3-down handcuff, but if Josh Jacobs were to get hurt, he would probably get all the work on early downs. Rashad White, we mentioned him. Jeff Wilson, he's the RB2 right now in San Francisco. If anything were to happen to Elijah Mitchell, then he would be the guy potentially on all 3 downs, because he is looking like the guy that they're going to play on 3rd downs now that they got rid of their 3rd down guy. So that's an interesting one to me. Josh Palmer, he's a wide receiver handcuff, pretty much. I'm not sure how much standalone value he'll have. He'll have his games, but if either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen were to go down, Josh Palmer is going to be big, potential league winner there.
Right. We have a comment here from JJ, and he wants to know if we can see the top 10 again.
Sure. I can throw that top. Well, and also, by the way, like, we're going to put this up on the Instagram as well a little bit later today. So you'll be able to see, the entire list. But sure. Not a problem, my friend. Let's see. Where is it? I think this is it right here. Is that it?
Yeah, it's loading.
Yep, there it is. Cool.
Yeah, you don't have to write these down. Like we said, the post.
Yeah. Exactly. It's going to be up on the website, and it's going to be on Instagram as well. A couple defensive streamers real quick. Tennessee at home against the Giants. They're favored by 5.5 points. It's one of the best streamers this week. Cincinnati at home against the Steelers. They're favored by 6.5 points at home. Another good streamer. Why do I like home teams who are favored by a lot of points? Because if they're up in the 4th quarter and the team has to go pass heavy, then they're going to be one-dimensional, and the pass rushers will be on the field for every play. So higher chances of sacks, sack fumbles, interceptions. All that. Philly in Detroit, they're away in Detroit, but they are favored by 4 in Detroit, which really means that they're favored by 7. Carolina at home against Cleveland. That's another thing. Another one that, you might want to, think about, just because, they have Jacoby Brissett, not really the best, offense in Cleveland right now. So that's another option for you, unless, Nick Chubb just tears them up. But we'll see. I mean, if I'd rather go with those other options first before going with those guys. I do want to mention before we leave, a couple of running backs who might have a little bit of standalone value if you're in a pinch or if you're in a deep PPR league, and these running backs might be available in your league. J.D. McKissick, only in full PPR leagues. Travis Homer is a little bit of a sneaky one this week. Kenneth Walker likely not playing. Well, he's not playing, right? Rashad Penny will. But the Broncos are favored by 6 points in Seattle. That's going to be a negative game script, okay? There's a potential the Broncos just destroy them. So the guy that's going to be on the field is probably not Rashad Penny. If the Broncos go up big, Travis Homer is going to be the guy on the field. And Travis Homer, he looked amazing in this preseason. So he's a little bit of a DFS play potentially, but also somebody, if you're in a deep league, in a PPR league, you can kind of throw him in a pinch.
Right.
All right. That's all we got. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys. Take it easy. Those are your waiver wire picks. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we're coming back at noon tomorrow, Zach. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, noon tomorrow on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about some trade targets and who. There are people trading right now. It's not even week 1 yet. games haven't started, but people trading, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about a bunch of other stuff tomorrow too, as well. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take it easy. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys. See ya.